If we were to ask ourselves here, as we're looking at this text, why were they bothered by Peter and John? Why were these rulers, the powers of the world, the power brokers of that world, why were they bothered by Peter and John? First of all, because Peter and John were proclaiming that Jesus is the ultimate authority. They were basically saying, guys, the gig's up. You can have a nice little pretend game here, pretending that you're in charge and that this is real freedom and this is real peace. Meanwhile, you're excluding the weak and oppressing the poor. But you know what? The gig is up. Jesus is the ultimate authority. But secondly, Peter and John were preaching the resurrection. So, well, what's so subversive about that? Why is that politically subversive? Do you know the weapon of the tyrant? The only weapon the tyrant has ultimately is death. Do it my way or else. Or else what? Or else I'll do this. Oh yeah, and then what? Then I'll do this. Oh yeah, and then what? Then I'll kill you. That's what tyrants always say. That's what they did to Jesus. And when Peter and John go about preaching the resurrection, that's another way of saying, go ahead. Do your worst. It won't work. Imagine that. Imagine that. There are lots of things we're afraid of, but if we're honest, the ultimate fear really comes down to a fear of dying. And I don't want to die any more than anyone else does. But we live in a culture that insulates us from death and dying. We don't want to see it. Let's get all the people who are sick and let's put them in another building where we don't have to drive by it or look at it or think about it because I don't want to think about dying. That's Caesar's trick to make you think life is happy, happy, joy, joy. And if anyone disagrees, there's death. And Peter and John stand up and they say, what do you got? That old death trick? Yeah, you killed Jesus. Peter just said that. You crucified Jesus, but God raised him up. What's up now? This is Peter and John saying, you cannot stop what God is doing. Not even death can stop it. I want you to recognize just here what a powerful hope that is. Peter, in Acts 3, preached after he spoke healing to the crippled man. He said one day Jesus is going to come back and he'll bring about the restoration of all things. Church, I want to tell you that your hope is so much better than heaven. Your hope is so much better than that God's going to evacuate us and get us out of here. Anybody who's ever been in a schoolyard fight knows that when dad has to pick you up and then you leave the bully, that you can't say you won. That's not winning. That's going home. And Christians talk about Jesus as if Jesus has come in his nice car to say, come on, get in the SUV, let's get out of here. That's not what he did. We're not waiting for Jesus to come and take us home. Peter says we're waiting for Jesus to bring about the restoration of all things. That's so much better. That's so much bigger. That means that everything that is sick and wrong and broken in this world, one day God the Creator, who does not abandon his creation, will put it all back together again. That's resurrection. That's what it means to say that Peter and John were preaching the resurrection. They weren't preaching simply heaven or forgiveness. They were preaching resurrection. Interestingly, the Sadducees were the one Jewish sect that did not believe in resurrection. Wonder why? Because if there is no resurrection, then all there is now. And if we're in charge now, then that's good for us, isn't it? Resurrection's bad news for all the power brokers of this world. Because it means they will not have the last say. It means tyrants and oppressors and thugs, like the ones who the other night committed these awful atrocities in Syria. That thugs will not have the last word. The powers and rulers of this world will not have the final say. Resurrection means that Jesus is king and the world will see it one day.